So this actually happened last week. It just took me some time to come to terms with it. I got a phone call from my next door neighbor late in the evening, asking if I can help him move a mattress into his upstairs. His mom is ill and has a big heavy sleep number bed. I of course ran over to help because they're great neighbors. I get over there and his friend, who is also a priest, was there to help. I helped them figure out how to separate the mattress from the bed so we could fit it upstairs. We get it all moved up and back in place when my neighbor asks if I can help them move an armoire upstairs too. I think nothing of it and we pull it out of his travel trailer and start bringing it up the front stairs of his house. This is where I died. The front stairs are 11 steps. I was on the lower end of the armoire about 6 steps up when my neighbor and his friend lose a handle on the armoire and it comes crashing down on me, and I fall backwards towards the pavement. I then wake up in my dining room to my phone ringing and my wife asking me if I'm going to answer the phone. It's my neighbor asking me if I can help move a bed upstairs for his mom. I go over there and meet his priest friend again, as this has been the first time I met him. I say I can help with the bed, but I cannot help with the armoire. My neighbor was like, "How'd you know about the armoire?" I then proceed to tell them I'm pretty sure I just died. I spent the next hour talking with the priest. He had so many questions. My neighbor didn't believe it until I described the upstairs bedroom in perfect detail, down to the metal mattress frame on the floor, and the intricate headboard leaning against the wall. And I had never been upstairs in their house before. The priest asked me what I saw after I died. I told him I never actually died. Before it happened, I woke up at my dining room table. This isn't a very interesting story, but I just have to share it. It's been bothering me for some time now. First, a little bit of background. I go into work right around 2 p.m. and get out around 8:30 p.m. I always take the same route to and from work. Also, I've been working at this particular store for about 6 months. Well, one day, about a month and a half ago, I started feeling really weird while I was at work. Almost like I was there, my body was there, but my mind was somewhere else. It started about 2 hours before my shift ended. I thought, okay, kind of weird, but I was taking cold medicine at the time, and figured it was just that messing with my head. Until my drive home. On this particular night, I got out of work a little late. My DM came in because we had to unplug and shut down everything in the store, so the city could do some kind of energy whatnot or other. I don't remember the details. I just know that if we didn't unplug everything, the shit would get fried. So I'm driving home about 20 minutes later than usual, and my anxiety starts building to the point where I feel like I'm going to have a panic attack, and the feeling of being there but not there starts to get worse. That's when I see it. As I said before, I take the same route every day to and from work. But as I went down the road, I looked to my left and saw this big semiconductor plant all lit up that had never freaking been there before. I pulled over on the side of the road, freaking the F out. I know for a fact it had never been there before, and it's really hard to miss driving home in complete darkness with a huge lit up power plant. You didn't even have to look for it, you couldn't miss it. I sat there for a minute until I'd calmed down a bit, trying to reassure myself it had always been there. I just wasn't paying attention. I'm not going crazy, I probably just hadn't seen it before. A few minutes later, my boyfriend called me and asked if I could pick up some McDonald's for him. Sure, not a problem. I passed by one on my drive home. The feeling of anxiety and not being there started to fade, until I pulled into the drive-thru, ordered my food, and then a worker I'd never seen before was sitting at the front window. I asked him how long he'd been working there. He said about 2 months now. Now I'm really freaking out. I came to this place nearly every day for months at varying times throughout the day. Even weirder yet, he was the only worker there that night. I'm sure there's an explanation for that part, but it sure didn't help me feel any better after discovering a new power plant just popped up out of nowhere about 20 minutes earlier. I proceeded to go home and have a full-blown panic attack, curled in a ball, shaking, crying, hyperventilating, the whole deal. I told my boyfriend about the power plant I'd seen, and he said, "Oh yeah, that's always been there. How have you not seen it before?" And now, every day I look at that damn place and freak out a little bit, because I know it was never there before. Since then, I've noticed tiny little details about my life are just slightly different. Like my dog not knowing tricks she's known since she was a pup, or my boyfriend pronounces a few words differently than he did before. The only explanation I can come up with is that I accidentally slipped into an alternate reality while on my drive home from work. Okay, so a few years ago, my dog died. One I loved very, very much. At the time this happened, I really hadn't gotten over the fact that my dog was dead, and I wouldn't see him anymore. One day, I was scrolling through my TV guide, and absent-mindedly called his name. I heard a jump of him jumping down from something and running down the hall to come to me. He jumped on the couch next to me and I felt it. I started to pet him and I did feel his fur. After a few minutes, I realized I didn't feel him anymore. I looked down and saw a depression in the cushion where he had been, and it hit me. I don't have a dog anymore. I flipped out, wondering what the heck was I petting? I ran around looking for the thing, but couldn't find it. I thought about animal control, but they would think I was crazy. I kept looking for about an hour, but couldn't find anything. I was not dreaming, drunk, sleep-deprived, or anything else. I don't know what to think. If anyone out there has a similar experience or answers, I would love to hear them. This has never happened again. I've told this story so many times before, and to this day I have no rational explanation for it, nor does anyone that has analyzed the sequence of events. It began on a trip to a popular creek many would gather at to party, take a dip, or just hang with the family. The water of the privately owned creek was dark and about knee level for a regular adult, and even children being able to wade most of it without worries. There was a small deep section that was more to the far edges, but I was unaware of this. It was a summer vacation when I was about 16 or 17, I think, and I got my group together for a huge party there. After a few hours of us partying and hanging on the shore, a few of us took a dip. My swimming skills were nothing amazing, but I can at least not sink like cement. I began wading out a bit, and within seconds, I felt my feet completely slide off the edge of the shallower bit into the deep end. I could feel the forward momentum of slipping carry me forward a lot too, so much so that I couldn't even reach the edge with my tiptoes. I began to panic and sink. It felt like that was the end, that surety of death gulping down nothing more than cold water for what felt like ages. I couldn't get a foothold, much less propel myself in any direction. As I swallowed mouthfuls of liquid, hoping for oxygen, I could feel the darkness of the water itself just surround my consciousness, as if I was being taken by that cold abyss. At that point, I kinda came to terms with death. This is it. I'm done. At that exact moment, I felt a spark of pure energy. Screw this, I'm not gonna die, was the only thought then. I made an attempt to flail a bit. It was a useless movement, but I wasn't giving up. Somehow or another, I ended up back completely on the shallower bit, my feet firmly planted on muddy soil that wasn't there a second before. Not on the edge of the shallow bit, but about 4 feet away from the deep end. I then saw everyone rushing towards me, my friends swimming frantically. To their eyes, I was in the deep end but a second ago, about to drown. And the next, I had saved myself before they were even halfway to me. Not more than a minute or two had passed, yet to me it seemed so much longer. My perception of time changing because of adrenaline, who knows? There was simply no way I could have moved that distance, through me weakly flailing at the limits of my breath. I moved at least 6 to 8 feet total, as 2 dudes in the group swam out to where they saw me, and based on the distance from the slope that ends the shallow bit to the deep end, it was definitely a considerable distance if you aren't swimming. They were all pretty dumbfounded. No one knew what the hell happened, but we were all just bloody relieved. We've discussed that event so many times, yet it still remains a genuine mystery to them, and me especially. Maybe I teleported, maybe I was saved by some higher being, a guardian angel even. All that I'm certain of is that I might have teleported through space and time before that spark of life left me.
Weird glitch in a suburban train. Okay, so this is my first post, and I apologize in advance for my mistakes since English is not my first language. This happened a few years ago when I was in high school. Like 7 years ago. I was in a train with some classmates, back from a school trip at a museum in Paris. We lived in the suburbs and had to take the train for 45 minutes to an hour before getting home. So we're spending this time talking and laughing, then arrived at one station. Let's call it Station A, where one of our classmates lives. So she says goodbye and leaves the train. The very next stop is ours, Station B. So my friend and I went off the train at this next station. But when we are on the train platform on the dock, again, sorry for my choice of words, the train's already leaving and we don't recognize our station. We walk a bit and just don't understand where we are. We finally notice that we're at Station A and have just to take a bus to go home. Calling my mom to tell her we're a bit late because we got off at the wrong stop. I don't fully recall what we thought at this moment, but I remember we were just lost on the reason of why we ended up here, and probably assumed we were too tired to pay attention. The next day at school, I went to ask the first girl who left the train if she went off at the wrong station the night before. Because we stopped at Station A instead of B, that would obviously mean she got out at the wrong stop too. She answered that she did go out at her stop, Station A. I'm having a hard time explaining the story even in my native language because it's easier when you know the train path. But anyway, it's just like the train stopped twice at the same location, and we are sure the train moved between those two. We talk about this sometimes and still don't understand. Maybe it was a glitch in the Matrix or some parallel world thing, but to this day I still don't get what happened that night.
The story isn't too terribly eventful, but it's still one of those stories that comes up between my mother and I because of how weird it was. This happened somewhere around a year ago, back when I was 17. My mother and I were driving around on a Saturday, doing various errands and all, when my mom says that she wants to stop and get coffee. We head to the nearest Starbucks and decide to go in to get our coffee. It was a nice day out, so why not? We get in and we order. My mom goes to pay with her phone, but then realizes that she left it in the car and that she has to go get it. I tell her not to worry, I have the app on my phone too, so I pay for our coffee, I get a free one, no big deal. Everything goes like normal. We go sit down and wait for a few moments. They called my name and I went up to the counter to get the drinks when I noticed that mine was incorrect. I informed the barista, he apologized and said he'll remake it really quick. I agree and decide that I'm going to stay up at the counter while he does so I don't have to sit back down and come back up. I know, I'm lazy. I motion to my mom from across the Starbucks that it'll be another moment, and she looks like she understands. Then, after a couple of seconds, I feel my phone vibrate in my pocket. I pull it out, and it says that my mom is calling me. I glance up to look over, and my mom is sitting at the table cleaning her glasses. I look back at my phone, and yep, it definitely says that the person calling me is my mother. I kind of laughed at first, thinking she must have pocket dialed me, so I decided I was going to answer it. I swipe and put it up to my ear, expecting to hear rustling and the ambience of Starbucks, but when I answer it, it sounds like somebody is crunching paper in front of the microphone. I could hear a strange sound in the background of the static. It was kind of like that tone you get when you turn a radio dial really slowly and the channels that are a bit out of range try to fade in and out. That really strange high-pitched sound of an antenna searching for a signal. I was genuinely confused. I said hello to see if somehow my phone had picked up someone else's call or something. After a few more seconds of static, I could finally hear a voice come in just a bit clearer. But the only thing that I heard it say was, "Do you want to get coffee?" It almost sounded like the conversation that we had had just before we decided to get Starbucks. Like it was recorded and being played back into my ear through a radio or a tape player or something like that. After a couple more seconds, the call just sort of fades out and then ends. I stare at my phone in confusion, but in the end, I just shove it in my pocket and grab our drinks. I get back to the table, and I mention to my mom that I think she somehow pocket dialed me. She then reminds me that she left her phone in the car. That's why I had to pay. Something I had somehow immediately forgotten. This just made the whole situation weirder. I show her my recent calls, and it shows that I did, in fact, receive a call from her, and it lasted 46 seconds. We take our coffee, head out to the car. Lo and behold, her phone is sitting on her dash clip in plain view. She checks it when we get in, and much to both of our surprise, her recent calls shows that her phone did have an outbound call to my phone at the exact same time. There was no one else in the car. Her doors were locked, and there's no way someone would have broken in, grabbed her phone, called me, played back a conversation that was recorded, and then hung up, and then locked the doors again. Honestly, neither of us have any explanation as to how this happened, but part of me thinks it was some sort of alternate dimension or alternate timeline call. One where I hadn't gone with her to run errands, but she called me asking if I wanted to go get coffee.
This happened to me about a year, maybe a year and a half ago, and to this day, I still can't quite say what happened. I was in my room. I was browsing the internet while I had a head of garlic roasting in the toaster oven in the kitchen. Then I heard my dad come inside, so I figured I could kill two birds with one stone and say hi to my dad while I went to check on my garlic. I walked out of my room and caught my dad halfway down the hall. I said hi and something along the lines of, "Gotta go check on my garlic." My dad simply replied with a quick hi and walked straight into his room. I didn't think much of it and just figured he had a long day at work. It should be noted that our hallway is narrow and my dad is much bigger than me, so as I passed my dad in the hallway, I had to press myself against the wall to squeeze past him. While I was in the kitchen, I heard the front door open. My dad's car started and he left, which I thought was super odd, since he hadn't been home for but a few minutes at this point. Again, I brushed it off and went back to my room. About 5 minutes later, the front door opened again, and it was my dad, except this time he was loud and energetic. He came in and immediately hollered out, "Is something cooking? Something smells good." I came out of my room and said, "Yeah, it's the garlic, remember?" That's when he asked me what I meant, when I said, "Doesn't he remember?" And I explained to him that he had just been home, and I told him about the garlic when I passed him in the hallway, that I had just seen him a few minutes ago, and that he had walked straight into his room. His demeanor immediately changed and he said, "What do you mean? I just got off the highway and pulled into the driveway right now. Are you telling me someone went into my room?" I told him I saw him go into his room. At this point, he was dead serious and went to his room to check for any missing items. He was under the belief that a home invader had come in and rummaged around his room. Once he was calm, I explained to him exactly what had happened, and even explained that the person I saw was even wearing the exact outfit my dad was when he walked into the house. My dad was about as spooked as I was. To this day, I still have no idea what happened there. At one point, we thought that maybe my dad had an absence spell, since he's had times before when he was driving, where he forgets chunks of time. Although we couldn't explain then why he came in and then immediately left again, or how it was that my dad clearly remembered just coming off the highway before getting to the house, or where he could have gone in the few brief minutes between when he first left and when he arrived again. And to this day, the one part that still really creeps me out is just how close I had been to my father when I slipped past him in the hallway. If anyone has any ideas of what might have happened that night, I'm all ears.
This happened a couple weeks back. For my birthday, I was gifted a beautiful gold-plated sunflower necklace from my boyfriend. I usually don't take it off, but for whatever reason, I decided to this time. For context, this was right before I was about to hop in the shower. I had nothing on but a towel. I undid my necklace, and just as I was about to take it off, it slipped out of my hands. I never heard it hit the floor. I spent about 20 minutes searching every square inch of the bathroom floor. I shook out my towel, I checked under the sink, under the bath mat, absolutely everywhere. But my necklace was nowhere to be found, so I decided to shower and look for it afterwards. You can imagine the shock I felt when I stepped out of the shower to find my necklace in the middle of the bathroom floor, right where I was standing when I dropped it. I was absolutely baffled. I had no idea where it came from. It was just sitting there in plain sight, and there is absolutely no way I could have possibly missed it when I was looking for it. This was probably the weirdest thing I've ever experienced, and I still can't come up with a logical explanation as to how it happened.
Have you ever met someone new and it felt like you've known them your entire life? I'm not talking about that stupid romantic love at first sight BS either. Like you meet someone and they look familiar, you can guess things about them to a T, but you've never known them prior. I work for an insurance company. I'm the one who reviews the financial records for businesses to make sure they're paying for insurance premiums, workers' comp, etc. Not a very exciting job, but I've also been doing it for years, so the pay is pretty good. So we hired a new person last year. I'll call her D. No big deal. People come and go, move up, leave, whatever. So I just thought it would be a new person that would ask me tons of questions at the beginning. Talk to her in passing, meetings, and so forth. Nothing special. However, when I met her, she immediately looked familiar. So I tried to place her. Maybe I've seen her at the gym I go to, a restaurant, or maybe she lives in the same apartment complex as me. So I don't think much of it and just go about my daily life. After a few days, though, I get to talk to her more since I basically help with the job training, and some of her mannerisms and the way she talks are so familiar. So I finally broke down and asked her where she used to work or live, or about her gym memberships, and to my surprise, she wasn't even from this state. She moved from Tennessee to here in South Dakota because of a job opportunity that her husband was offered. I've never been to Tennessee, and she'd never been here. So, okay, fine. She probably just looked like someone else, or it was one of those deja vu moments. But it gets weirder from here. I start to think that maybe I just feel like I know her because we get along so well. She's very polite and also sly with her insults, like you may not even catch it. And when she's on the phone and she lets one slide, she always looks at me with her cheesy grin like, "Did you catch that?" Which I find hilarious. I never really had someone I could do that with at work in fear of people taking it the wrong way. So I always had to just hold it in and share it with my husband when I got home. She's very intelligent. She went to a local community college for business, but she was super knowledgeable about health/biology, or whatever you want to call it. The reason this is important is because I happened to call her out about it accidentally. I mentioned I was having issues with heartburn at some point, and I just figured it was because of the coffee I drink in the morning, or maybe what I'd had for dinner the night before. But she mentioned that I should go to the doctor about it as it may be more serious. It didn't really occur to me that it could be something worse, but I am a smoker, so I figured, wouldn't hurt, right? surprisingly, an insurance company has great insurance too. So I went, and come to find out I have GERD. This actually helped a lot to have an answer, and ways to help manage it, and also to get me to quit smoking. Anyways, I brought this up to her and thanked her for it, but I happened to make a comment how it was weird that she knew, and we both said at the same time, my/your mom's a nurse. We both paused, and she asked, "Did I tell you that already?" But she hadn't. I just shrugged and said, good guess, and moved on. But seriously, I have no idea how I guessed her mother was a nurse. The things I happened to know about her before she told me started becoming overwhelming. It kind of became a running joke between us that I must have looked her up before she was hired. I had guessed that she'd had an older and younger brother, or that she was a middle child. I guessed she liked painting and biking. I even guessed that she was in a bad accident as a teenager, and she made me guess where her scar was. I guessed it was on her right leg, but it was actually her left leg. The reason I guessed right leg, though, was because I was in a bad accident as a teenager and had a scar on my right, which also leads to the oddity of this. The reason I was able to guess all this, I feel, was because it was so similar to my life. I was the middle child. Older sister and younger brother. I loved painting, even though she was way better at it. My mother was a veterinarian, though, but some kind of doctor, right? I even moved here from North Dakota for my business and accounting degree, and met my husband here, so we stayed. We shared other similarities, and even looked similar. Long, curly, light brown hair, hazel eyes, similar build. Even our husbands look similar. Our views and opinions are dead on the same. We became so close that I even went with her to Tennessee when her mother had an emergency and was in the hospital for a week. Again, I'd never been to Tennessee, but it felt so familiar. When we went to the hospital, I seemed to know exactly where to enter and what floor to go to before we even saw the map and setup. Now, how would I have possibly known any of this? Obviously, because of this, it has led us to become incredible friends. Sure, it's cheesy, but we can even finish each other's thoughts and sentences like it's nothing. We hang out constantly. The four of us are usually together every weekend. We even tried to find an apartment close to each other so we could ride to work together. I'm incredibly lucky to have met someone like this, but then I can't help but wonder, were we supposed to be the same person? Were we supposed to be in different timelines and something crossed? Is that why I seem to know all of these things about her? I've talked to her about this, and she finds it intriguing, but had no knowledge on my past and couldn't guess any of it. Did I do something at some point that caused a glitch or a parallel universe of some sort to merge?
This will be short, but it's happened in the same place about half the time I drive through here. Back when I was 16, I had a boyfriend who lived almost 40 miles away from me. The drive from my house to his would usually take 45 minutes. This was before texting existed. One weekend, I got permission to go stay with my boyfriend, after our parents talked and made sure I would be sleeping on the couch by myself. So I called his house right before I left to let him know I was on my way. I took the usual drive, staying at the speed limit, and enjoying the view. Nothing out of the ordinary happened. No weird light or fog or even a feeling. I pulled up to his house and started to gather my stuff when his mum came out and went pale. She said, "You're not supposed to be here yet." I asked her what she meant as we walked into the house. She replied, "You left 20 minutes ago and are already here? How fast did you drive?" I told her I stayed at the speed limit, even on the long dirt road. But sure enough, the clocks in the house and my watch all showed the same time. I was there more than 20 minutes early. I have no explanation, but I've driven that same hill with other people and it's happened. Ever since that first time, going over the one particular hill will cut 20 minutes off my drive, on average 4 out of 10 times. I wish I knew what was going on. Is there a section of frozen time where I'm aware of the landscape passing, but time isn't actually moving? Do I jump through time? Is there something relativistic going on? I likely will never know. But until then, I'll enjoy being 20 minutes early for about half of my drives.
AirPods materialized. Weirdest thing just happened. I had my AirPods in the case in my left pocket. As I sat down, the case fell out and opened, facing down. My floor is carpet, so there was no sound and no risk of damage. I just observed that other than the open lid, they were fine and chose to just leave it until I got up again. Well, I got up about 10 minutes later to go do something. And when I came back, I remembered they were on the floor next to the chair. The case was still there, but one AirPod was right next to the case on the left, and the other was 2 to 3 feet to the right of the case. Not only do the physics of this not add up, but if I had seen they weren't in the case the first time, I would have picked them up right then and there to avoid stepping on them, etc. I have absolutely no idea this happened, and I am completely perplexed. I vividly remember looking down at them a few minutes earlier, and the sight when I returned was completely different. I didn't kick the case, and we don't have a cat or anything. Super weird.
Yesterday at work, something odd happened. It might not seem major, but it freaked me out because it wasn't one, but 2 glitches in a row. I work at a retail store selling clothes, and a customer comes in. She browses for a while, and since the shop was all but empty, I went and asked if I could help her. I remember what she looked like. She was fairly tall, blonde, petite, blue eyes, and had a beauty mark on the left side of her lip. You know, a small mole. I could see her mouth because she was wearing a see-through face shield and not a mask. She was also wearing a blue fleece sweater, blue jeans, and white shoes. Well, we chatted for a while and she tried on a couple of outfits. She ended up buying a few things and left. I went and back, but when I came back out, I swore she was still in the store. She was turned away from me and I went up to ask if she had forgotten anything. When she turned around, I didn't notice it at first, but something was different. Tall, check. Blonde, check. Beauty mark over the left side of her lip, double check. She even had the same clear face shield. She acted like we had never met before, like she didn't know what I was talking about when I asked if she forgot something. This struck me as strange because we had just had a long conversation, and she bought an outfit. She was more standoffish than she had previously been and said she was just browsing. Later, she comes up with a shirt. It was a pink shirt, and asked if we had it in a large, maybe in back. I blinked for only a second, I swear, and when I looked at the shirt again, it was now blue. I looked at her and asked her how she did that. She asked, "Did what?" I explained, and she looked at me like I was going crazy. That's when I noticed what was different about her. Her eyes were now brown instead of blue. She still looked exactly like the woman I had talked to earlier, though. I excused myself and went back, somewhat embarrassed now, and thinking I was going crazy. Oh, I should mention that the shop has a bell on the door, so anyone coming and going makes a noise when they go through. Came out from the back to tell her we didn't have that shirt in any other size, and she was gone. But I'd never heard the bell chime, which also reminded me that I'd never heard the bell ring the last time I was in back when she came in. The other weird thing is that shirt she had first shown me that was pink and then turned blue. We don't even have that shirt in pink at all. I don't know if I had a stroke or imagined the whole thing or what happened. I don't think she was a ghost because she looked just like the first woman that came in, except her eye color was different. Some weird joke played by a set of twins? Then what about the shirt changing colors? I just can't figure it out.
This happened last Saturday, Sunday. On Saturday, we took a short local trip with my family who visited me as I live in another city. After they left, I got home around 6 p.m. and was watching YouTube and whatnot. For some reason, I got an urge to call my grandpa. However, I had to get ready for a night out with my friends. We were meeting at 8 p.m. and so I thought I'd call him the next day. This was literally the first time I got this urge since we don't really talk that often. Anyway, the next day on Sunday at 4:10 p.m, my grandpa called me asking if I called him yesterday, as he got a missed call. I told him I didn't, but I did think of calling him. I asked when he received the missed call, and he said around 7 p.m. I was doing my makeup and stuff by then. However, I'm sure I didn't call him, and there's no such log on my phone. The last time we talked was July 12th, 2020, according to my call log. Interestingly, the urge I had was to call my grandpa, although he and my grandma share the same phone, and he was the one who called me instead of my grandma. Has anyone experienced something like this? Maybe you have an explanation for this. I found this extremely bizarre, yet I'm glad my grandpa called me about the supposed missed call, since I forgot to call him the next day.
My dead mother sent me a sign from beyond. Or just a coincidence. So I was just reading an old thread from here about phone calls from deceased friends and relatives. I have a story that relates, but that is for another time. This is something that recently happened to me, and I feel weird mentioning it to anyone because they may think it's just a coincidence, and I'm trying to make something out of nothing. But I can't let it go. Long story short, my mom had been sick for the past 2 years. Things got worse last year and then really bad this spring. In July, she passed away. I have sisters, but I was the main person taking care of her, and we became exceptionally close in the past 2 years. I was the one she called for everything. Needing help ordering something online, questions about insurance, doctor's appointments, random other things pertaining to day-to-day life, etc. At the end, she was so weak, so when anyone asked her to verify the last 4 of her social or date of birth, or secondary insurance to Medicare, she knew I would answer for her. I helped her with it all, so I was well versed in her personal information. Fast forward to a few weeks ago. A friend and I were going to a drive-in movie, and I needed a few things at Target. So I decided to place an order for pickup and added a few snacks for the movie so we would be set. I get to Target and check in on the app. As per usual, the app says someone will be right out with my order, and to show them the 4-digit code through the window. I briefly glance down at the numbers, look away, and then quickly look back at the numbers in utter shock. The 4 digits are the last 4 digits of my mother's social security number. It wasn't backwards or off by a number or out of order, but in perfect order exactly as listed on her social security card. I feel like this could be her, but I'm not sure what proof would be sufficient, since I think even if I were to see her, I'd think I was going crazy or just needed rest. I notice numbers a lot on license plates, on receipts, on clocks, etc., but can't recall ever seeing something that hit me like this. Is this a glitch or a thinning veil scenario or just a strange coincidence? Thanks for reading. Appreciate your thoughts.
The story isn't too terribly eventful, but it's still one of those stories that comes up between my mother and I because of how weird it was. This happened somewhere around a year ago, back when I was 17. My mother and I were driving around on a Saturday, doing various errands and all, when my mom says that she wants to stop and get coffee. We head to the nearest Starbucks and decide to go in to get our coffee. It was a nice day out, so why not? We get in and we order. My mom goes to pay with her phone, but then realizes that she left it in the car and that she has to go get it. I tell her not to worry. I have the app on my phone too, so I pay for our coffee. I get a free one. No big deal. Everything goes like normal. We go sit down and wait for a few moments. They called my name and I went up to the counter to get the drinks when I noticed that mine was incorrect. I informed the barista. He apologized and said he'll remake it really quick. I agree and decide that I'm going to stay up at the counter while he does so I don't have to sit back down and come back up. I know, I'm lazy. I motion to my mom from across the Starbucks that it'll be another moment, and she looks like she understands. Then, after a couple of seconds, I feel my phone vibrate in my pocket. I pull it out, and it says that my mom is calling me. I glance up to look over, and my mom is sitting at the table cleaning her glasses. I look back at my phone, and yep, it definitely says that the person calling me is my mother. I kind of laughed at first, thinking she must have pocket dialed me, so I decided I was going to answer it. I swipe and put it up to my ear, expecting to hear rustling and the ambience of Starbucks, but when I answer it, it sounds like somebody is crunching paper in front of the microphone. I could hear a strange sound in the background of the static. It was kind of like that tone you get when you turn a radio dial really slowly and the channels that are a bit out of range try to fade in and out. That really strange high-pitched sound of an antenna searching for a signal. I was genuinely confused. I said hello to see if somehow my phone had picked up someone else's call or something. After a few more seconds of static, I could finally hear a voice come in just a bit clearer. But the only thing that I heard it say was, "Do you want to get coffee?" It almost sounded like the conversation that we had had just before we decided to get Starbucks. Like it was recorded and being played back into my ear through a radio or a tape player or something like that. After a couple more seconds, the call just sort of fades out and then ends. I stare at my phone in confusion, but in the end, I just shove it in my pocket and grab our drinks. I get back to the table, and I mention to my mom that I think she somehow pocket dialed me. She then reminds me that she left her phone in the car. That's why I had to pay. Something I had somehow immediately forgotten. This just made the whole situation weirder. I show her my recent calls, and it shows that I did, in fact, receive a call from her, and it lasted 46 seconds. We take our coffee, head out to the car. Lo and behold, her phone is sitting on her dash clip in plain view. She checks it when we get in, and much to both of our surprise, her recent calls shows that her phone did have an outbound call to my phone at the exact same time. There was no one else in the car. Her doors were locked, and there's no way someone would have broken in, grabbed her phone, called me, played back a conversation that was recorded, and then hung up, and then locked the doors again. Honestly, neither of us have any explanation as to how this happened, but part of me thinks it was some sort of alternate dimension or alternate timeline call. One where I hadn't gone with her to run errands, but she called me asking if I wanted to go get coffee.
This one blows my mind. But a few years ago, my grandpa had passed away. Us grandkids got to split up some trinkets and whatnot as a way to remember him. I picked out this really nice pin he used to always use. It has an ivory handle with gold accents, really beautiful. I always kept it on my desk at home. It was a fountain pen and probably could have still been used, but I kept it there to look at. Took it to an antique store to see if I could find out what I had. Didn't plan on selling it. Only wanted to know if it was worth anything and if I should take special precautions to preserve it. I mean, it looked fancy and expensive, so I didn't know. Got there, had a guy look at it, yada yada. Somewhere on the way back it disappeared, because when I got home and checked my pocket, I couldn't find it. Thought maybe I'd left it at the shop, so went back there and it wasn't there. While it was worth a bit of money, it wasn't worth enough for the shopkeeper to lie to me or something, so I figured it fell out of my pocket somewhere and was gone forever. That was a little over a year ago it went missing. Then, just last night, I came out of the shower and went to my room. On my desk was the pen. I was completely floored. There is no way it could have gotten there by itself, and I hadn't seen it in a long time. At this point, I don't really know what to think. Anyone have any ideas of how this could have happened?